Good afternoon, and welcome to a new edition of Tuesday Talks. My name is Rebecca Hansen. Today I'm joined with a good dear friend of mine, Amanda DeSalvatore. She is a mom, a wife. She is very creative. She works in communications. Today on Tuesday Talks, where we usually encourage and inspire others and one another. Wanted to take an opportunity to speak with her about her vocation in the marriage and family life, what it's been like for her during quarantine, and also to talk a little bit about the gift of friendship and the love that she has shared with a very special individual. So Amanda, welcome to Tuesday Talks.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you said yes. I've been praying about this for a very, very long time, and I wasn't quite sure where to put you on schedule. But with recent events that have happened, I can definitely see the spirit and the hand in this situation. So I'm glad we're finally able to connect.
Yes, me too. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started. What's Amanda's life like?
Amanda's life is crazy. I have 5 children that range from 13 all the way down to our newest 5-year-old. She's a spitfire at the end, but that range of children means that I go through all phases of childhood development over and over and over again, and differently, because they're all so very different from each other. So I am a wife of almost 15 years to my husband, Frank. It's a wild ride, but I like the ride. I like being on this journey with him and with the kids. We're always trying to find new ways to be better people, and I think that's the biggest theme about how we approach everyday life. Sometimes we do it in the small things, and sometimes we do it in big things, but you know, it's just raising humans to be good humans, right?
Right. And that's always a challenge, you know, and we since being, you know, good close friends, we've discussed, you know, the 1 versus the 5 and
Mm-hmm.
similarities, but the differences and the pros and the cons, as it were. So I've always wanted to just always ask you questions, because I'm a mom of 1, and I'm surprised she's alive some days. Like, how did I do that? How did she make it to 12? I'm not sure.
Well, I wonder that about some of my kids too. I'm not sure how some of them have made it, but they've done okay. Yeah, it's whoops, I lost you. I'm sorry. You're back.
It's okay. You're back.
You fell on my lap. Hold on, I gotta adjust my face. All right, there we go. All right. Yeah, but I guess that's my everyday living, is just being a mom to 5 people. But I always try to find that way to get away from them too. And I know that sounds mean, but it's that I gotta have my own time, my own space, you know. And I always remind them to respect mine, because I know that that's a huge thing about growing up with a lot of siblings, is you're always hearing that, Mom, they're in my room, Mom, they didn't knock, Mom, you know, and everybody's encroaching on everybody's personal space. So that's why I sort of demand it for myself sometimes. Gardening is a big one for me in the nice weather. You know, if I'm gardening, and I tell them all the same story, if I'm gardening, that's my quiet time.
Right.
Because when I'm out there, I'm kind of getting into my own head, and sometimes I'm working things out, and I don't want to be interrupted with Mom. So if they absolutely don't need me, please let me just garden in peace. I'll answer questions, but
right. But if anybody is missing a limb, or if anybody is bleeding profusely,
and if Dad can actually handle it too, why do you ask me? You traveled through the entire square footage of our household just to get to me. Your dad was sitting right next to you. You could have asked him. He would have been a good answer.
We know that moms always do it better than dads, right?
Right, a little bit.
No shade, Frank. I'm sorry.
Well, I can tell you, I think if we go back to motherhood, and then also the vocation of marriage, I think the biggest thing that I always tell everyone about how to make marriage work is that you have to be partners in all of this. On this journey, you have to be friends. Yeah. And because there's going to be times where you're not lovers, and you're not parents, and sometimes you're just roommates for a little bit. And other times, most of our marriage, it's a friendship. And so being on that same wavelength as each other and understanding, even if we're going to have different approaches or different ideas, that's also a respect and a friendship too. So I think that's the biggest part of being married, and going into marriage with that mindset too. We didn't, even though we got better as time went on and we, developed a better relationship as we were married, going into it, we knew that we were friends first, and that was going to get us through the tough times and the bad times and the struggles and, pandemics and stuff like that.
Oh, well, I mean, how has that, and that's the thing, like, let's talk a little bit about that. Like, how has the quarantine and the COVID situation, how has that affected your troop? What's going on? How are you doing?
Yeah, I've been through like every phase and every emotion that you can possibly be going through. One of them, there was high levels of anxiety, fear for my own children, but then also fear, what if I caught this and passed, and what would my children be left? Is Frank prepared with that? What if I lost him, in all of this, in this crazy world? And I know that this must have gone through many people's minds at different times. And so I tried to, being at home and being forced to stay home was probably the best thing for the anxiety, because it was like, okay, well, home is safe for me. And I know it's not safe for everyone out there, but for me, that is a safe place, and it is a safe place for our family. And then that slowly relieved the anxiety as time went on, and being busy with schools being out, that was like, I've gone through even phases with that, having 5 children come home with all different types of schoolwork. It was like, how am I going to do this? Because your watchers may not, but that I went back to college. So I had my own semester to deal with, and I was already online. So one stressor was not there, that I had to like switch from campus to online. I was already online. But how am I going to juggle? The main reason I went back to school is because my youngest was now out of the house and in preschool. Right. And how was I going to balance that? So now I just, March 16th, and boom, they're all in my house. Again, it's like, oh, wait.
Like, whoa, mom needs to study. Shush.
It didn't happen, but we had really great professors on that end that were really understanding. So I think that was good. Some professors took some coursework away to alleviate the pressure. Others just gave you an insane amount of time to turn it in. So I feel blessed that they were understanding, and I don't think, this was worldwide. So how can you not? Like, right. Everybody went through this. So I think that was helpful. But as far as the kids, I was thankful to have some independent personalities. So they went through it. We were all gung-ho at the beginning. I'm posting pictures left and right. I'm like the top mom here. Not that I wanted to be the top mom, but I'm like, oh, I got to do all of this stuff. And then that slowly fizzled away, because then it became routine. And It was like, no, this is real. Like, we're not getting full, like, probably before the end of the year. And even though I had settled that in my heart, there was that angst of, for them, they've gone through so many different things and maybe haven't been able to talk about it every time. So we've dealt with a lot of emotions and just curiosities, confusion, a lot of tears, even loneliness. And I feel like my oldest was even dealing with a little bit of depression, and some anxieties. But yeah, socializing is like a very human trait. Even the most introverted, like my husband's a pretty decent introvert, and he was like, this is a lot.
Yeah. Well, that's something I found, something that was really funny that somebody had shared with me, because they know that the dynamic in our marriage is I'm the extrovert and my husband is the introvert. And so the big joke was like, check on the extrovert, we're really not okay out here. And I'm like, right. Yeah, preach it, But then somebody did a follow-up that said, also check on your introverts that are stuck with extroverts, because they don't want to be there. Like, they're introverts. They don't want to be they want to be alone. And, now they're stuck and made to feel like they have to be in this house with these people. So check on your introverts too.
Yeah, it was more so like, for us, it's we like to get out and do things and have, break up the monotony of our schedules, and there is no spontaneity in this. So that takes away some of, I guess, our creative natures in a sense, even when it comes to like what are we going to do today,
Right.
like that kind of thing. So we've gotten creative at home, but I don't think it quite matches some of our tried and true things that we want to do or can do. So
I remember in the very beginning of quarantine, I was that Pinterest mom, and I did stuff on my whiteboard like, all right, yeah, I was like the cheerleader, like, okay, let's go. So I wrote like on the whiteboard, like 9 to 9:30, da 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 da, 10:30 to 10:45, da 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 da. We're gonna pray a rosary. We're gonna do the Divine Mercy Chaplet. We're gonna do da 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 da, and all this stuff. And then once mid-April hit, I'm like, I'm sleeping in.
for real, like
Sleep is greater.
We were up every morning. Sorry, Mr. R, if you ever catch this, but we were up every morning for his morning announcements, and we did it like they did with school. And we sat there, we prayed, we had the devotions with his morning announcements, and then it slowly drifted because there was no like reason to really go to bed at bedtime or let's watch a movie because we're in quarantine. Nobody's going to work tomorrow, And so slowly the schedule did sort of get a little loose, and I got some I will say I have gotten some much needed rest.
Yes. Yes.
This has been great for mental health in some ways. In some ways it's been a disaster. But for the ones that feel safe at home, who maybe had that relief of the anxiety of the pandemic and were able to sort of rest, this was good for them. It's unfortunate if it can't be that for others, but it was good for me, and it was nice to not have to wake up. And then it started to you just drift into this like different schedule of no man's land, where I'm like, I'm up. We'll start school whenever, for the kindergarten.
Exactly. Father Bellafiore and I, we always say when we did we do like a Thursday thing that's kind of like Tuesday Talk, only very short edition, but we always talk about like what month and what day is it and what year is it, and
is it?
Yeah, it's like it's okay, it's the day in 2020. You're like, all right, what day?
No, time frame has been weird. Yeah. Like just the amount like time that's gone by. Even my kids are like, wait, how long have we been in this? I'm like, I can't even tell you. I know when it started and I know what date it is now, but like trying to map out that like we've experienced so much, and then also not experienced anything at all. So
correct.
It's a very weird no man's land.
Yeah, that's it. Gosh. So listen, while we're on that no man's land kind of discussion, I wanted to just go a little bit deeper into the Earth's crust of what our prayer life has turned into during the time of quarantine. A lot of people have inboxed me because they know what I use my platform for. And, they ask me for prayer, like, hey, Rebecca, can you pray for me? Or, hey, Rebecca, can you help me remember how to pray? Or, Rebecca, I don't even know if I want to go back to church type of thing, and not in a monstrous or evil way, but just that, they never took into consideration the spread of germs and how, quick that can all come down on you. And so a lot of my friends and a lot of my colleagues are kind of, I don't want to say losing faith, but for the lack of a better term, and they're having a hard time in their prayer life. Maybe it's a dry season, it's a challenge season, it's a drowning in the flood season. So are you experiencing any of that on your end? And if so, how are you dealing with that?
I think for me, prayer has always been a struggle because I think for me, it was, that I'm a convert, but I'm a convert to Catholicism. So my old Protestant days were filled with like, how eloquent can my prayers be? Because a lot of them would be out loud. Protestants are big on, praying at events, and not that we don't as Catholics, but it's a little bit different. Sometimes it's a more formed prayer as opposed to something that's off the cuff, and even off the cuff praying is uncomfortable for Catholics. So there's a little bit to each his own kind of thing in that. But if for prayer itself, it's always been this thing that like, am I being eloquent enough? Am I saying the right things? And then as I came into the church as a Catholic and realized sometimes it can just be this small thing, I started making that more of a point to just think on these small things and just say what's on your heart silently. Do the formed prayers, because I think that they help us get back into prayer. I don't think there's really anything wrong with setting yourself up with, like, even if you can't pray like all the decades of the rosary, go through like just the prayers of the rosary.
Yeah.
They're a lot, most of the time you know them all.
Mhm.
And they're really great ones. And then reflect on what you can get out of them, and then branch off into other things. But I think everybody has points where I think we can all admit that we just don't pray enough. And I think that's why we seek out inspiration from the saints. Or for me, some of my inspiration for faith comes from, can I gain new knowledge from the church itself and the teachings that are within the church, and what am I missing out on? I think a lot of people base their walk only on feelings, and I don't think it's just that. I think it's a balance between feeling the Holy Spirit in your life and working in your life, and then also keeping yourself educated in the faith, because you don't want to be spilling out things that aren't the church's teachings just because
Right.
they feel good to you. The church it was one of the most enlightening points of my life coming into Catholicism, because it had all the right things going on, where it was like, even though there's faith, there's reason, they don't just throw ideas out and little sound bites. There's like valid information behind maybe a teaching in the church, catechetical teaching in the church. Coming from Protestantism, I had to adjust a lot of the thinking, because they don't like the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
So how can I be converting to it? How can I be coming in? But yeah, I think I can always do better with prayer. But what I've found where I can strengthen my prayer is in those ways. Just when I don't have my own words, say something small. Lord have mercy. Even those old, I hear a lot of elderly people saying Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, like,
Oh yeah. Yes.
but that actually is a prayer. It's not
Yeah.
just a quick little, banter of something that goes wrong. It's sort of like a prayer. It's not, it doesn't have to be like that. It can actually be something where you're calling on the Holy Family to be a guide for you, because they have a lot to offer. We actually had a really, really beautiful present given to us at Christmas time. My in-laws had the joy of going to Italy. I think it was up to 2 years ago now. I can't, time doesn't matter now. But anyways, the Pope blessed the image of the Holy Family, and it was an icon, and it was beautiful, and it's like glass glazed. So of course, the first opportunity we have to put it out at Christmas, we're like, we are putting this up,
Yeah.
and then I looked at Frank afterwards and I'm like, we're not taking it down. Like, let's just leave it there. And I think sometimes that's good too. Having little prayer reminders around your house. Don't be afraid to be Catholic in your space.
Yeah.
Have a crucifix up and look at it. I have this gorgeous, I'm not going to show you because I'm hiding a lot of like real life over here. It's a pile of stuff. But I have this beautiful Our Lady of Good Counsel that was given to me by our priest that helped us come into the church. And it's probably one of the most gorgeous images I've seen of Mary just being very motherly and loving towards Jesus. And she's kind of caught in the moment, but Jesus is looking up at her like, I got all the answers. I'm just a baby right now.
Yeah.
So give me some time, Mom. And so
give me at least 5 years to get to preschool,
yeah. I need some time here.
One of the things that I have been very grateful for, a priest that we both share in common, Father Brian Slezak. He was our pastor at the church that we go to at our home parish. He's moved on to a new parish, so congratulations to him. Always praying for him. One of the things he helped me to kind of muddle through, I always found the rosary completely dry. I'm like, oh, we're just saying a bunch of things, whatever. And I would go and I would say it, but I would say it begrudgingly, and we used to say it before mass at Saturday, mass. We say it between 3 and 3:30 and, whatever. But it was just one of those like old lady prayers. Like, I'm a millennial. I don't need to pray the rosary.
Right?
Like, ooh. But I was also brought up not Catholic. I also am a convert, and we share that story too. I grew up Methodist, where again, like, people pray in tongues, El Shaddai, like all these things, and you pray on the spot. And so when I pray out loud with my O's, my husband and my daughter, my husband has said on multiple occasions that my prayer is my superpower, right? And so there have been instances where both my husband and my daughter said, wow, like, that prayer really, and I'm like, okay, yeah, Holy Spirit, like, let's go. Because the words are not my own, I'm just like, it's from my heart, and my chest feels warm sometimes when I pray out loud with my O's. But so I shared that with Father Slezak at one point, and I said, just like, the rosary is just, I feel like it's an old lady prayer. And he was like, am I an old lady? No, you're good, but it's been a mud puddle, quicksand type of trudging through, and I'm finally at a very heartwarming space, and I have to say that it's definitely a God moment for me, because I have grown to love the rosary in a way that I've never before. And I have so many miraculous medals. My husband got me a locket with a miraculous medal in it. I've got some miraculous medals from my mother-in-law that were her mother's, so, and just different, apparitions of Mary that have been kind of iconic for me, to kind of say, hey, maybe you didn't have the best mom growing up, but I got Jesus's mom, and that's good. And so growing into the rosary, I've actually had the opportunity at my current position right now. I lead a rosary prayer on Zoom for some of our parishioners, and it has been the most beautiful ministry. And reading the mysteries and the meditations, and really reflecting on what those mysteries and those meditations mean. And then again, just like you said, the rosary prayers are beautiful on their own. The Hail Holy Queen is one of
it's like
them.
my favorite.
Yeah, I know. Like, yeah, it's so good. It's so good. So I find comfort in the arms of Mary. And as Catholics, a lot of people accuse us of worshiping Mary, and I'm like, no, she's like mom. Like, don't you go hang out with your mom?
That's actually a really good thing to mention, because I think, even converting, that was one of my big things trying to get over that, was like, oh, I was always told Catholics worship Mary. How am I supposed to, make peace with that? And then the more I learned about it, it was like, oh, well, not only does it make sense the way that they view her, and the outside perspective, I find this happens a lot in life, where the outside perspective, it seems like something, but no one's taking the time to slow down and actually ask if that is the truth, or does this make sense? They just come up with a conclusion, and then just that's the truth for them.
And then when you go to like talk about it and engage in conversation, they shut you down. Do you have that?
Right.
Does that happen?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I mean, this can go with anything, but it works with this. And when you mention that she's holding you, like, as a mother, one of the things that I always say to my kids is, I'm not always going to be the best mom. I'm going to make a lot of mistakes, and I do make them, and I try to apologize when I make those mistakes. But if you ever feel like I'm lacking, go to her.
Yes.
Because she's not lacking anything.
Mm-hmm.
And for you to heal from maybe me, for when you don't
right.
feel like I've been the best mother, she's gonna be that mother for you in those moments, and maybe she'll even lead you back to me and help us both to figure that out.
That's right.
That's right. So I hope that they take that advice, because I think it's very true. I think that's what the rosary is really supposed to do. It's supposed to help us feel that motherly love
Yeah.
and that guidance. And then of course that guidance does send us to Jesus, which is most of the rosary as well. But
Correct.
in a way that it is an embracing thing, even the shape of the rosary and everything else.
Yeah.
It's a very embracing thing. So I think, why not, embrace it yourself.
I saw a reflection piece that indicated that when you clutch your rosary beads, that it's almost like holding your mom's hand,
Mm-hmm.
and I said, yeah, yeah, like that. I could feel that because it's supernatural, but I feel comforted and peaceful and at ease and clear, like
Mm-hmm.
the clarity that I can speak, or that I can think and help to make decisions. It's almost like having your mom be like, all right, let's go, like let's go through this. So
Yeah,
it's always a relief.
it
So.
is.
So listen, in regards to wonderful, wonderful relationships and things that make you at ease and full of peace, you shared something during one of your class sessions for one of your projects on one of your dear, dear friends. Her name is T. And I wanted to know if you would do us the honor of sharing a little bit about that friendship. What, who is she to you? How did that start? Where is that moving in your life?
So I think I'll start with, I'm the type of person that has not only realized, but I think just by nature, I don't tend to keep a huge group of friends. I tend to be very, very much so small group, tight group. These are my people. But like, I don't need a lot of broader, acquaintances. My friendships have to mean something.
Yeah.
So I had like a lot of close people, or I had one close person going into college, but college was like really weird for me. I came from like a small private school and hadn't really experienced a lot of life, but was just feeling very alone and strange. I always felt like I was a person who people just didn't quite understand. They either misinterpreted how I said something, because maybe I did say it wrong, but I didn't mean for it to come out that way. Or I was judged very harshly going through school. And I think a lot of people can, you know, yeah, they can agree with that time in life, high school, middle school, all those times, they're rough. So coming out of that, you get into college and you're like, it's going to be all different. I've got this freedom to be who I am. I get to kind of grow up and be mature, and college is its own sort of fun, experience of exploring. But
Right.
I knew the one thing that I did know going into college was that I was going to go into an arts program. And I chose fine arts, and I really wanted to go into digital arts and design, but at the time it was sort of, believe it or not, new. It was just coming into its own. Graphic design has been around for a while, but it was changing, and I was at that pivot point right around the early 2000s. So I did not meet T. Her full name is Teresa. I did not meet her my first semester there, but I met her in my spring semester at a group. It was like all the fine arts students had to group into this room. And it was such a weird experience because here I am, I'm like all alone. I'm sitting at the table. Everybody else chose to sit on the ground because they were the cool kids. And I'm over here going, oh, look at that pink haired girl. She has got that artsy flair about her, tattoos on the shoulders and, just really, really bringing the fine arts major thing, to the room where I'm like more like preppy and not quite comfortable with who I am. And we didn't really like talk or anything, but I like kept hearing her answer. It was a satellite link with the Metropolitan Museum down in New York City. And she just had all the answers. It was like, we're looking at paintings and I'm like, I don't know what this is. Maybe it's my sheltered life, maybe it's whatever, but I just don't get it. I don't know who this is. I don't know why we're talking about this, but I was like open to listening. So when I hear her talk about it, I'm like, oh yeah. And then I'd see it, or I'd see something else. And maybe I wasn't brave enough to talk during that meeting.
Sure.
But the next semester, our semester started to line up. If you're a fine arts major, you're eventually going to meet up with all the fine arts people.
Yeah.
Whether it's in the studio or in the photography dark room or whatever, you're going to run into fine arts majors. And she was the one that approached me And she looked a little different when I saw her the next semester because we went through a whole summer and then fall semester started again. And she was the one who started talking with me, and I couldn't get over why she was so interested in me. Like, she just was like, oh, well, tell me about this. Oh, well, what about this? Oh, well, and then it just, the conversation kept going, and I'm thinking, at some point in time, I'm going to say something that's going to really tick her off. Like, she's not going to agree with me, or maybe she's going to find out that I'm religious. And not that I just didn't gather that she was religious from,
Right.
our conversations. So I was like, she's going to find out I'm religious. She's going to want nothing to do with me. Or she's going to find out that, this or that, and I'm going to be misunderstood. But she always pushed. She always like pushed to converse more or understand better. And we didn't sit near each other in the studio right at first, but through some weird, strange fate, some event happened over a weekend and suddenly she was next to me. And I'm like, cool, like, because you were over there and I couldn't talk to you because we had like easels with paintings on them and
Right. Those things are huge. Yeah.
yeah. So if she's on the other side of the studio, we ain't conversing. It's
Right.
because it's just, you got your little hub with everybody around. So when she moved, it was like, oh, yay. Like,
Yeah. Another person. Yay.
yeah. And she squeezed herself into a spot that I didn't know existed. It was her and somebody else had moved their spot. So this was like a big thing because it was like, I'm not talking with them anymore. I'm going to be here. But then it like really, really blossomed. And we ended up with 4 semesters in different classes together. I met her mom, I met her sister, I'd go over her house. She lives really close to our home parish. And, it was just this enjoyable time. But at the end of our time at Hudson Valley, we eventually had to go off to, bachelor's degrees and moving on. And I chose to actually wait a semester because I just had no idea. But she wanted to go, and we ended up all receiving these merit scholarships to go out to a school in Chicago. And I just was really not ready to move that far, but she was like, I'm going. Yeah. So once we graduated with our associate's degrees, we had that little bit of, it was like a couple weeks in the summer before she had to move. So after that, it was really, I guess, the distance, it immediately makes that hardship because that's where she is and this is where I am. And long story short, she always like made the effort. And I think that's the most beautiful thing about her, was that when I got busy, when I got married, when I had kids, she was the one calling me and being like, hey, I'm coming to New York in 2 weeks. You're on my list of people I got to visit. And then she would just sit down at my kitchen table and we would just talk. And it wasn't like those hard talks where you're like, oh man, what are we going to say next? Or how do I, what great, awesome thing happened to me that happened. She didn't let that happen. She just always like had something in her head and was like, oh, tell me about this. Oh, well, what did you do? Last time we talked, this happened. Did you get, did this happen afterwards like you thought, or did it, she just always kept the conversation moving. Before you know it, hours have gone by and you realize that's it. That's my visit for this time, and I don't know when the next time is going to happen. Sometimes it was near holidays. Sometimes she'd come home in the summer. But of course, the reason why we're even talking about Teresa is because she passed away last summer, and we're coming up on a year. So of course that's a difficult anniversary to come up on. And her mom, after she passed from a disease that, like a autoimmune disease that she had, and by when she passed, they still hadn't figured it out quite right. But it places you in that state of like, this isn't fair because we didn't have enough time, or I didn't do good enough. I didn't text her enough, or I didn't call her enough, or didn't send that letter that I meant to send her, or that gift that I wanted to mail. And so you have all these regrets going in. But grieving is a strange process. Grieving a very close friend is a different type of grieving than like grieving a grandparent that maybe was ill or of, elderly age. And it was like they had a long, long life. Grieving someone that passes, that you feel like it's too soon and somewhat tragic of a loss. It comes with, there's no handbook.
Right.
And it's very confusing to have to go through all the waves of emotion that come at different times. But, I wouldn't, so there's, to digress a little bit, there's a counterpart to me. I thought Teresa was such a lovely person, so kind and charitable. She used to send me packages, and she'd bring gifts to my kids when she'd come. And I knew she didn't have a lot of money, but she'd like go to the dollar store and buy like a little wooden truck when Levi was little. And, he played with that thing like crazy. But, she had a counterpart in Indiana who I met once briefly. And when Teresa passed, I went to the funeral home thinking, man, this line's going to be so long because she was so young, and it's going to be crazy crowded. And it wasn't, because I didn't know, but she was just a person that kept people very close to her and didn't. So funny enough, friends for years, but I didn't know that she was very similar to myself. So she just didn't, she only kept those, as her mom put it, those, like, she had laser vision. She would like look and see that you were friend potential, and then she'd grab on and not let go. Mm-hmm. And you were her person then. And so when I walk into this funeral home thinking it's going to be so crowded and there's only a few of us there, and then realize that like the other counterpart is here, she drove from Indiana, who also has a nickname, Felix, but her real name's Amy. But I lost you again. Sorry. We ended up, being able to share in that grief, and I think that was important. But one of the things that we came out of it with was, you can't have this big of grief unless you have big love. Mm-hmm. So being loved by Teresa and her sweet, generous ways, and just her ways that she just looked at the world and talked about it, and we didn't have to agree. And I think that that's the real beauty of it, is that we were all, we could be friends and not have everything, all the boxes ticked on who we are and what we are. So I think that that's a good thing to understand. It's sort of really, now that I'm saying it out loud, it's like really applicable to what's going on now in the world. It's like, you don't have to always agree, but by golly, you can be kind to each other, and you can be humans with each other. And it doesn't always have to be this like thing, even if you think it's going to be. Just, and maybe it won't turn into a great friendship, but if it does, like, that's a beautiful thing to have. And it's something to mourn, and it's something to grieve over, because it's not really here anymore. But I'm a firm believer that, in my faith and in my church, and I know that that she's still here, she's still around, and she's still praying for us and trying to, make her way, maybe a different way, but still a good thing to be. It's still difficult to deal with, but it's, you take hope and your faith sometimes in those moments, trying to find the happiness in the midst of it. Yeah. It's really no one's fault. I think that that's another thing that happens, is like people want to blame things, and it's, unfortunately, it's part of being a human. These are some things that are just gonna hit us, and maybe at a time when we don't want them to, but then it's, we adapt, and we change, and we say to ourselves, we should reflect, and what, in all of this, what can Teresa teach me? What can T teach me in this life now that she lived, and she lived before she left us? What is there to still learn from her? So, I can approach days like that where it's like, oh, she used to mail something to someone, do a kindness, or just listen, you know? I think that's the biggest thing I remember about all our visits, because you know that I'm a talker.
No.
As we're almost clocking in
No,
50. But she loved that, I think, because every time we came to visit, I mean, I wanted to know more about her. To me, she was a mystery. Why you like me so much? Why do you want to spend so much time with me? You know, why do you always want to converse with me? And then she would do this, and we get into this conversation, and it was always about like asking me what's going on with you, or what, you know, and then by the time we had no time left, you know, I'm saying, well, oh man, I wanted to ask her this, or I wanted to learn this. And that's where I think most of my regrets are just, why didn't I just call her? Or, oh, by the way, I'm a big advocate for calling now, because although we could text, just call someone. Doesn't have to be all the time. But, you know, if you're feeling like, if you're thinking about someone and they're on your mind, just make the time to give them a call.
Yeah.
You know,
that's
and don't
fear kind of tapping you like, hey, maybe
on them, you know, because for a long time, like, I didn't have a cell phone because, you know, I was raising the kids. We were trying to save on bills and things like that. So I didn't have anything like that, but that's how she stayed connected with like her family and friends. And so for me, she always had to call me, you know, to set up these things for the longest time. So even when I did get a cell phone and I was able to text, I tried to like get into it more with her, but like I felt like I lost all these years of connection and communication. So then you feel like, oh, I got to get into, you know, a thread with her and keep it going.
Right.
And those are my regrets. I mean, we have some threads from right before she passed, and you know, those are the things where it's like, the what ifs, you know, what if I just drove over to her house while she was living here, because she came back from Chicago and lived here with her parents because of her sickness. So, you know, she's so close again. So why don't I just drive over to her mom's house and do what she did with me? But those are the things. Yeah.
And that's something that I have not taken for granted. And that's a big reason why I do these Tuesday talks. And some days, albeit it's not always on a Tuesday. For example, today is not a Tuesday.
No.
But, you know, life happens, right? And so you have to say things of, okay, well, we ran out of time on this day, but let's do it a different way, you know? And I've always, I love fiercely on people. And that's a cross I have to bear. Because it's good, but sometimes it's bad. And it makes people uncomfortable, or I can just be too much, or I'm being so extra, and, you know, I make people uncomfortable. And, you know, and I'm much like T, where it's like, once I have you, you're mine, you know, and I'm like, come in, and I don't let like a bunch of people into that inner, you know, circle, but like once you're there, like you're there, you know. And so you've made it there. And so like, but there are, you know, some other folks I have done these Tuesday talks with where I'm like you're there, and you are lights in my life, your encouragements and inspirations to my life. And I can't encourage and inspire others without having people pour into me. And so I am extremely grateful that it's kind of like a ripple effect, right? Where like your friendship with T has, you know, ebbed and flowed, and for better or worse, the things you have learned from that friendship have benefited me and benefited our friendship greatly. So that, and not for nothing, but I know that in our relationship and our friendship and how we communicate with one another, you know, it's one of those low maintenance friendships, which everybody's always so, oh, I wish I had, you know, it like, we don't always get to talk, but when we do, it's like we never stopped talking. And it's like we just pick right back up where we left off. And that's a beautiful thing. And that's a gift on its own.
Right.
But it also helps me to not take you for granted, you know, and then that also helps to ripple effect that I don't also take my other friendships for granted. And that all stems from your living out your relationship and your friendship with T, you know, and you having shared that project with me moved me to tears. And I'd shared with you in previous times, but that it also made me look on my life and say, God forbid, if I was going to lose one of my friends, did I take advantage of those moments, of that last, opportunity? Did I tell that person how I really felt, even though it might have been out of the norm, or even if it may have made somebody uncomfortable? I want that person to know how I feel, and like, I love you, and I love you unconditionally, and I love you regardless. And I'm going to love you like Christ loves you, and I'm going to serve you like Christ serves you. And, I want that in all of my relationships. But you know what, to be fair, I also do want that in my enemyships, right? And it's hard. That's where I'm trying to grow. I don't know if I'm doing a good job, but there are a chunk of people in my life that I'm just like, but that's the best way I could say it. I don't have any words, but Christ calls us
I put
to
that on a magnet and put it on my
but Christ calls us to love those people fiercely too, and with reckless abandon, and to just, those are the people we need to be even more loving on.
Yeah.
And it is hard, and it hurts, and it's confusing. But like I said, I draw strength from the friendship that you built with T, and that gives me encouragement to pour into my friendships. And honestly, and this is probably out of left field for you, but your sharing that with me in previous times was actually a huge catalyst for why I decided to do these Tuesday talks, because I wanted people to know, hey, you're important. I want to highlight you. I want to share you with people because you have been amazing to me. And I want to, not sleep on this moment. I want to be able to let people shine for who they are before the moment gets away. So thank you.
You're welcome, I guess.
But in any event, this is kind of time, I guess you could say. I could talk to you forever. And we've talked for a long, long time. But I'm going to cut it off here. I want to tell you thank you, just in general. Your example of your faith-filled family life, and your example of what it means to be unashamed and unabashedly Catholic, and how we have these uplifting conversations with one another, encourages me to continue my faith life and my marriage journey. And I appreciate you as a person, but also as a friend, and you are definitely one of my people.
Thank you.
And thank you for having the courage and the patience to have this time for Tuesday Talks. I really appreciate it, Amanda. Thanks for coming out.
Oh, you're so very welcome. I'm actually surprised no one came in my bedroom door while we were doing it. I heard steps at one point in time, and I thought, oh, that's it. I'm going to have like a little photo bombing session here. But no, they all knew too. It was like, Zoom in with Rebecca. So.
Well, this has been Tuesday Talks, and next week I have somebody really special in store. But in the meantime, enjoy this conversation, share it with people who need to be encouraged, and we will see you on the next edition of Tuesday Talks.